This is the 2022 head-to-head bow test for Rokslide.com, and these are the companies and the bows that have chose to participate. We have the PSE Carbon Levitate S2, the Mathews V3X 29, the Prime Inline 3, the Hoyt Ventum Pro 30, and the Gearhead Disruptor 20. Now let's jump into the specs of these bows. PSE Carbon Levitate S2 is offered in 25 to 29 inch draw, 60, 70, or 80 pounds, has an axle to axle of 32.25 inches and a brace height of 5 3/4 inches. Mathews V3X 29 is offered from 60 to 75 pounds, comes in a draw length of 25.5 inch to 30 inches, has an axle to axle of 29 inches and a brace height of 6 inches. Prime Inline 3 is offered in 26 to 30.5 inch draw length, 40 to 80 pounds, has an axle to axle of 33 inches and a brace height of 6.5 inches. Hoyt Ventum Pro is offered in 25 to 30 inch draw lengths, 30 pounds all the way up to 80, has an axle to axle of 30 inches and a brace height of 6 inches. Gearhead Disruptor is offered in 25 inch to 28.5 inch, has a draw weight of 55 up to 75 pounds, has an axle to axle of 20.5 inches and a brace height of 7 inches. PSE 4.1 pounds, Gearhead 4.3, the Mathews bouncing between 5 pounds and 4.9 pounds, the Hoyt bouncing between 5.2 and 5.1, Prime, as you can see, is bouncing between 5 and 4.9. .3, 70.5, that's 70.6, 70.3, Hoyt is 70.8. You know, I think out of all the bows I'm testing, it probably has the most aggressive draw cycle, and it definitely dumps into that back wall the hardest. However, once it's in that back wall, man, it almost feels like you gotta push that string forward in order to get it out of the back wall, which is a crazy feeling. It has a really solid back wall, especially for being, you know, cable stops. I mean, you can see there's a tiny bit of movement, but not really much. So all in all, pretty great draw cycle, but definitely the most aggressive out of the 5. You know, there's really no dump into the back wall with this bow, which is really enjoyable when it comes to draw cycle. And because it is a limb stop rather than a cable stop, it's as solid as they come as far as the back wall is. And when you're in the back wall, it's not quite like the PSE where it feels like you need to push that bow forward, but a very, very enjoyable draw cycle on this gearhead and an extremely solid back wall. The Hoyt Ventum Pro has a nice draw cycle. It slightly dumps into that back wall. You can see it right there. But once you get into that back wall, it is a little spongy. I would say that the Hoyt has the most spongy back wall out of the 5 bows in this test. But the draw cycle itself is very nice, very smooth, and dumping into that back wall is almost not noticeable. The Prime Inline 3 has a great draw cycle, and you almost don't even notice when you dump into that back wall. Very little right there, but couple that with a limb stop rather than a cable stop, and this thing has one of the most solid back walls out of the 5 bows that I tested. So overall, really enjoyable draw cycle with the Prime.
The Mathews V3X is my favorite draw cycle out of the 5 bows that I've tested. It is so smooth, almost unnoticed when you dump into that back wall. For being a cable stop, there's almost no movement. And I just gotta say, I absolutely love this draw cycle and how smooth it is. Must say that the Mathews draw cycle is my favorite, even though the back wall is not quite as solid as the Prime and the Gearhead. I still love the Mathews draw cycle the most. Very closely followed by that is the Prime and the Gearhead. You almost don't feel them dump into the back wall, and I really appreciate how solid those limb stops are on both those bows. Up last would be the Hoyt and the PSE. What I'll say about the PSE is I am okay with that draw cycle being more harsh than the rest of the bows because it makes up for it with an exceptionally solid back wall being a cable stop, as well as how fast that bow is and the amount of let off that it offers. The Hoyt would definitely come in last because that back wall is just a little too spongy for me compared to the 5 bows in this test. Perfect bullet hole. There we have it. PSE's last shot has a bullet hole. Bullet hole with the Prime.
In the end, the Hoyt took the longest paper tune simply because I had to change out spacers and things like that. As soon as I got that, it paper tuned very easily and was very great to shoot. Up next would have been the PSE, and I think that has a lot to do with it having the smallest brace height out of all the bows. So basically that magnifies my inconsistencies as an archer. So that's really not even on PSE, that's more on my inconsistencies. But with that being said, it was still therefore harder to paper tune than the other 3 bows. Next would have been the Gearhead. You know, the Gearhead offers a bunch of adjustment, which can be very beneficial if you know what to do with those adjustments. Then it would have been the Prime, and the only reason the Prime is slightly behind the Mathews is because the Prime took 5 arrows to get a perfect bullet hole, and the Mathews only took 3. Therefore, the Mathews was the fastest to paper tune.
I messed up. I didn't film me shooting the PSE and the Hoyt, so. Ah! It's just...
$89.8, $88.2, $89.2, $93.4, $93.9, $93, $88.8, $87.7, $89.3, $97.6, $96.0, 98, 91.5, 90.5, 94.
In this portion of the test, I am going to discuss each bow shooting from the kneeling position and the sitting position. Poses absolutely no issues, easy to draw back. easy to hold the bow, everything like that. Once again, poses no issues. I really enjoy the Gearhead, you know. I enjoy that draw cycle. Once again, absolutely no issues with the Gearhead while kneeling. No issues whatsoever. Obviously, having that small axle to axle really aids in sitting down and shooting this bow. Zero issues. Draws super nice, super smooth. Again, super solid back wall. No issues whatsoever. However, subconsciously, I will say, my mind immediately had me look down at that bottom cam to make sure that it is not close to the ground. We are now onto the Hoyt. No issues whatsoever in the kneeling position. Draws smooth, holds well. No issues. And this bow has a small enough axle to axle that my mind does not immediately go, oh my gosh, look at your bottom cam. So that's really nice. Once again, drew completely fine with the Hoyt and no issues. No problem whatsoever. Nice smooth draw cycle into that back wall. Solid hold. Super smooth draw. Really comfortable. Great back wall. No worries or thoughts of that bottom cam hitting the ground or the string hitting my leg. Awesome. I just tested all these bows, kneeling and sitting, and I must say that none of them pose any issues in either position. With that said, the Gearhead bow was my favorite bow while sitting Indian style. That 20-inch axle to axle just made it super easy to draw from a sitting position. I don't have to worry about that cam hitting the ground or the string angle hitting my leg. As far as the bow that made me think about it the most while sitting, that would have to be the Prime, which makes sense. It has the largest axle to axle. So immediately as I was going to draw that bow back, I was wondering if that bottom cam was going to hit the ground or not in the sitting position. I will say that the PSE surprised me. I was a little nervous with how harsh the draw cycle is, that it would be challenging to draw back while sitting down, but it was truly no different to draw that bow back whether I be standing, kneeling, or sitting.
The Hoyt was not too bad to draw, but the Hoyt's draw cycle is not too harsh, comparable to some of the other bows that we're testing. So as you can see, I don't have to raise my bow a whole lot. I don't have to move side to side. And there's the shot. So the Hoyt poses no issues shooting out of ground blind. Now if I just hold the bow level, I have, probably 6 inches from the top of the blind. Oh, not too bad, not too bad, not a whole lot of movement there. Again, I think it's gonna have a lot to do with your draw cycle, and a lot to do with kind of like your mentality, right? Because you just obviously sitting inside of a blind, you just feel enclosed. And I know even when I'm fixing to draw the bow back, I'm like, don't hit the roof, don't hit the roof. So far, the Prime has been the easiest compared to the other two.
You know, let's go ahead and draw this back and see what happens. Ooh, not too bad, not too bad. So the Mathews being a really smooth draw cycle is definitely pretty easy to draw sitting down, and that's a huge bonus. I didn't have an issue shooting any of them. I just want to be clear, I did not have an issue drawing back and shooting any of these bows out of the ground blind, but this is what I found. For whatever reason, the Prime seemed to be the easiest, and then moving on to the Mathews and the Gearhead were pretty close. And then the Hoyt was right there with the Mathews. I think the PSE was the hardest, but again, I think that has a lot to do with the draw force curve and how used to you are sitting down. I'm looking at a group of 2.5 inches at 40 yards. So that arrow are 2.5 inches. That arrow are 3 inches, and that arrow are 3 inches. We are at 1.5 inch groups. So these two arrows are 2 inches apart, and if you go side to side and then this arrow to that arrow, I'm looking at 1.5 inches at 40 yards. Those two are 4 inches apart. These two are 5 3/4. And these two are almost 8. An 1.25 inches. 3 3/4. That one is 2 3/4, and that one's 2.5. These two arrows are 1.5 inches apart. These two are 3 3/4, and these two are 4.5. 1 3/4, 1 inch, and 1 1/4. 2 3/4, 2 1/4, and 4 inches. 4 inch, 4 3/4, 3.5. Half inch apart. That one is 2 1/8, and that one is 1 3/4. Or 2 3/4, sorry. 2 3/4 and 1/2 inch. Got 3 1/4, 4.5, and 1 1/4.
There we have it. That concludes part 1 of the 2022 head-to-head bow test. If you would like to see all the results from the tests in graph form, head on over to www.battlemountainmedia.com and click on Gear Reviews and select 2022 head-to-head bow test. Huge shout out to all of the companies for sending bows, Vapor Trail for sending a rest for each one of the bow, Stokerize for sending a stabilizer, and Black Gold for sending a bracket for each one of the bows for my dovetail sight to slide in and out of. Without you guys, this test would not have been possible, so thank you so much. All of these bows shot really well. However, for me as an archer, some of them shot better for me and stood out a little bit more than the others. The Mathews V3X draw cycle was amazing. Solid back wall, super dead in the hand, and just holds so well on target when it comes to shooting that bow. The Gearhead Disruptor 20 continues to blow my mind. The packability, adjustability, maneuverability, and everything about that bow is just mind-blowing. And I'm here to tell you, if you have not tested out Gearhead, you're missing out and you need to go check them out. The PSE Carbon Levitate is so light, it's kind of mind-blowing, to be honest with you. You pick that bow up,
and you're wondering what to expect, well, here's what you can expect. A super solid back wall for being a cable stop, very comfortable grip, almost completely dead in the hand and lightning fast, and it holds well when you're on target. So check that bow out for sure. The last two bows would be the Prime Inline 3. It had a great draw cycle, a really solid back wall, but it was just quite a bit slower arrow speeds than the rest of the bows and a little bit slower than I would like to have my personal bow shoot. Up last would be the Hoyt Ventum Pro. I shot really well with this bow and I really liked the draw cycle, but what I didn't like was the back wall. It had a little bit too much spongy and give for me as an archer and my preferences, especially because I shoot a tension release. With that, stay tuned for part 2 of the head-to-head bow test. I'm going to be taking each one of these bows on multiple hunts and be giving you reviews from the field.